church cares, and so does the St. Raymond Anonymous Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith. Hi, I'm Anne DeSantis, Executive Director. In 2015, the Mercedarian Friars came together because they wanted to start a foundation to help families in crisis. And that's exactly what we've been doing over these years. Whether it be something to do with divorce, separation, trauma, job loss, loss of a loved one, or other adversities, we've helped so many families get through those tough times through the spiritual works of mercy. We'd love to hear from you. Please do get in touch with us for our services. They are prayer, priestly consultation, podcasts and videos, and programs and events. We look forward to hearing from you. Just go to nonotus.org and get in touch with me. I look forward to hearing from you. God bless.
Fiat Ministry Network and Patchwork Heart Ministry present Journeys in Faith. Now, here's Anne DeSantis.
Good evening. Welcome to Journeys in Faith here on Fiat Ministry Network. My name is Anne DeSantis. It's great to be here for season 3. I know I keep bringing this up every week, but it's so important because we have over 100 episodes, and it's just wonderful to be here with all of you. Because, every week I'm interviewing these amazing guests, and this week we have another one. We have Bill Rivers. He is a #1 selling author on Amazon with his book, The Lost Boys of Summer. Bill, welcome to Journeys in Faith, and thank you for being with us here on this Friday evening.
Anne, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
Your book is so amazing, and you did a great job. And I thought I would read to our audience something that you sent to me, which I think really explained what the book is all about. You said to me that while it's not an explicitly Catholic work, that your novel very much incorporates Catholic themes of family, the dignity of the human person, into a historical fiction story set in 1968. And if you want to learn more about this book, you can go to the website, which is called Last Summer Boys. That is the name of the book. And I apologize that I got that incorrectly when we first came on, but lastsummerboys.com. So tell us, first of all, let's hear about you and your faith journey. I mean, this show is called Journeys in Faith. Mm-hmm. Mostly what we start out with when we have this program is your own Catholic faith journey and kind of what led you into the direction of where you are right now.
Sure. So my, and that may be my son you hear in the background. Like I was really, really fortunate to grow up in just a really devout Catholic family. I was the oldest of 5. And my parents, my mother was a convert, and it just was really important to them to raise us in the faith. And we had a really supportive extended family that were half Catholic and half not, but all just supportive of that. And so, and I grew up largely in a family of storytellers on both sides of the family, and I loved hearing those stories. And my dad, I remember my dad told us stories in the car on the way to school. We went to a little Catholic elementary school, and it was a fair bit of a drive. And on the way there in the mornings, Dad would tell us stories. And so that's how I heard The Lord of the Rings for the first time, The Hobbit, and really any other stories that little boys want to hear. Dragons and what have you. My dad told us those stories in traffic on the way to school. And so growing up, I went to a Salesianum, a Catholic high school in Wilmington, Delaware, which was a wonderful school. And then through college, it just stuck. The faith stuck. And in college, I found, you're on your own and you have to live it, on your own, kind of without those support structures there. But by then, it was my identity and something that I had tested and explored and wanted to keep living because I thought it was true, and I still think it's true. And so, now, 15 years removed from that experience, as a husband and a father, I think, oh, how can I pass that on, hand on that truth to my children, and found myself going back to the same ideas of stories and growing an imagination. And I think, and just to kind of close it out, I think the thing about stories and imaginations that's so important for the faith and for handing it on is that it helps us understand that there's a reality that is very real and very present, but not always visible to our senses. And that's true in everywhere in life. It's true in business and in politics and in science. There are unobservable phenomenon that absolutely impact our lives that we don't doubt that they exist, that they're present, and that we structure our lives and our economies and our foreign policy around these ideas. Um, and that's true in the faith aspect too. And so storytelling is somehow very important for helping people uh, see see differently, to kind of understand that in a different way. So, and that's why I wrote the book. Partly
Well,
why I wrote the book.
it's just very exciting because I think what you did, and as you explained to me when I read that little excerpt at the beginning, was that knowing what you know about your faith and how you care about it and how you want to instill those invisible realities, as you just explained as well, of our faith and what's really important in life. And I know that when you wrote this book, that although, like you said, it's not clearly coming out as a Catholic book, but you have those, it's unveiled in some way, shape, or form. And one of the things you had from General James Mattis, USMC, on your website, he says that Bill Rivers' debut novel is a rambunctious ballad to boyhood, duty, and family, and a heartfelt salute to those who became the patriots of the Vietnam War. The warmth of these irrepressible characters amid 1968's cultural storms gives heart to anyone wondering how to make sense of our own highly charged times. It reminds us that there's nothing new under the sun and stubbornly insists we too can listen to our better angels. I love the way that he put that. That's why I wanted to read it to our audience here to let them know, like, tell us, like, how did you get the idea for this book? And can you give us an idea of, like, the basic idea of what this book is about?
Sure. Thank you. And you're very kind to read that blurb from General Mattis. And I was very grateful that he gave it. In full disclosure, I worked for him for several years, so I'm very grateful for that. Um, the story, the simplest way to say it's historical fiction, and it's set in 1968, which is a year of turmoil in America. And for people who remember that time, I'm sure that they see similarities to our own present time today in 2022. And it was a lot of pain, a lot of social upheaval. Dr. Martin Luther King was killed. Senator Robert F. Kennedy, who was running for president, was assassinated as well. That's a lot of domestic pain. There was the Cultural Revolution that was going on, kind of everything turned on its head. There's a bitter, divisive war in Vietnam, abroad. And so in this really painful moment that has had such influence on the rest of American history for the last century and today, I just wanted to tell a story about a family that loved itself and wanted to stay together in the midst of this cultural chaos. And because I think that was really, really important. And there are lots of great stories out there about families breaking apart. And that's a reality in our life, and that's true, and that happens. I just wanted to tell a story about a family that had their own issues, their own divisions and fissures, but which each of the members imperfectly loves the others and wants to stay together. So you have two parents who love each other, and you have this family of boys, these brothers, and they live out in the hills. They're in rural Pennsylvania, and the main character is the youngest brother, who's about 12 or 13, and he's an innocent little boy, and he's also very naive. And he reveres his two older brothers, and the whole driving arc of the story is that he's worried his oldest brother, who's about to turn 18, is going to get drafted and sent to Vietnam and be killed. And when he's in a barber shop, this little boy overhears some of the men grumbling, saying that if you're famous, you don't have to go to war. And this little boy naively thinks, oh, well, all I have to do is make my older brother famous, and he won't have to go to Vietnam. Simple. And the story flows from there, from this naive belief, innocent belief that this little boy is now going to secretly turn his brother into the most famous person in their small town in middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. And it's just the adventures that he ends up triggering along the way. And there's a cousin who comes to them from the city. So he's leaving the chaos and the violence of the city. He's being sent out to stay with them for the summer. And this cousin is the Catholic character, and it's kind of through his eyes that we enter into this world, and a world that's very different from the city, with different values. These boys in the woods, they have a different code, and this cousin has to kind of fit in, and they have to test him to see if he's tough enough to hang with them on their adventures. So that's kind of the general scope of it.
Wow. I mean, the imagination can kind of run wild just thinking about what did he do to make his brother famous? I mean, what did he do? So I think that's enough of an intrigue to our
Yeah.
audience to say this book will really enrich your life, because not only, you know, the eyes of these different characters and the directions of their lives make it interesting, but knowing that your worldview is that Catholic worldview, and you're saying they stay together. This family didn't want to, you know, fall apart. And even during the midst of that crazy time of late 60s, early 70s, it sounds like they were able to make it through those times.
Yeah.
And that's
And
encouragement, isn't it? That's encouragement.
I hope so. And I just, wanted to tell again a hopeful story. And Last Summer Boys is a fundamentally hopeful story. And that doesn't mean that everything works out hunky-dory or happily in the end for everyone in the story. But it does mean that everyone is living by the truth by the end of the story. And that's actually a happy ending.
Yeah.
And so, the other thing about the title, Last Summer Boys, is that for all of us growing up, there was a last summer where we went outside to play with our friends with the purpose of going outside to play outside. And there was a last time that we did that, and we didn't know it at the time. So we didn't know that that was the last time we were ever going to run out into the yard or go down to the creek or, run to the baseball diamond to play with the guys. Or whoever else we were playing with at the time. And so the title kind of captures some of that too. So there is an element of nostalgia to it, but that's not the purpose. The purpose, as you say, is actually hope, and to entertain people. Hopefully, I believe it's an entertaining story for us today, but also just to give a little bit of that hope too, because I think we could all use more of that.
Oh, that's right. And that's really what this show is all about too. So we do have a lot more to talk about, and we have to take a break. So please
Sure.
do stay with us. We'll be right back here in a few minutes here on Journeys in Faith.
Thanks.
Welcome back to Journeys in Faith. Thanks so much for being here on this Friday night with my great guest, Bill Rivers. He was talking about his book called Last Summer Boys. The website is lastsummerboys.com. Very easy. Look it up on Amazon too, because guess what? It's a #1 seller on Amazon. It's a good gift too, because we're coming into the
Thank you.
holiday season, right? You can buy that book for someone that you care about. And tell us a little bit more about about the idea, because I think you did share a little bit about it, but it really is very unique, obviously. And you talked to people that you knew, you did some research, but was there like kind of a aha moment that you said, I'm going to do this?
Yes. So my uncles and my grandfather grew up in this area that was very similar to the one in the story, a very rural environment. And then my siblings and my cousins and I grew up on that same plot of land, or that same general area. And so you had different generations having their own adventures. And and I thought it would be really fun. And some of these stories are just wild. I mean, they're just kind of fantastic stories that and they actually, you know, they happen. But it's just kind of wild and fantastic is the word. And so I thought if you could weave those stories together, you know, across the generations, but set them in a single timeline, that would be probably really interesting. And so there needed to be a broader narrative arc to that. You can't just have episodic boys in the woods doing crazy things like, you know, daring each other to run through the cemetery at night or jump off of this railroad bridge, which they do. But you needed this broader arc. And so that arc of the story was, as we mentioned before the break, this little boy, an earnest little boy who wants to save his brother from being killed and or from going to war. And he spends the book and he spends his energies trying to keep his brother safe. And I woke up, it took me about 5 years to write it, mostly because I was undisciplined in how I started the project. I would write when I had free time. And it was only when I devoted time to it every day that it actually did end up finishing up. But about 2 years in, I woke up in the middle of the night and I realized that the story of of a little boy trying to save his brother, it's actually not a unique story. It's maybe the oldest story. It's a story of a lover wanting to save or redeem a beloved. And and I think that's the story of God's relationship with humanity. And it's there is a piece of that in all of the greatest stories, I think, is that there is to some extent someone who loves someone else and who is trying to help them, save them, or redeem them. And that's the great story. You know, that is the greatest story. And and if you hear my children upstairs, that's
It's
that's a
okay.
story I try to tell them every night too.
It's
Um,
entertaining for our audience.
oh, good, good. So anyway, that is kind of the unique angle that I realized 2 years in is that it's not that unique. It's maybe the oldest story out there, but each time it's told in a different way. And so that's just something that I am grateful for and was glad for that realization.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
Thank you.
I noticed something else on your website, which I do have to
Yeah,
bring up to our audience, because, of
sure.
course, this audience is about faith, as I keep repeating. But you have from Archbishop Chaput, which is a
Mm,
former Archbishop of Philadelphia, where I live
right.
in this area. He said on your website, which is one of the recommendations of the book, he says, those seeking a reprieve from our confused and callous culture will find something much more important here, a heartwarming, authentically human call to hold to truth, family, and our common dignity. No matter the cost, in witnessing one brother struggle to save another, we remember how in every age, love renews our wounded world. Very well said. I like how he expressed it, very similar to what you said. But isn't that true? We can see that love, that brotherly love, right? We're here in the city of brotherly love where I am, or outside of
Yeah,
the city. I mean, and
yeah.
but it's that story really of God too, isn't it?
Mhm.
And how he's watching over us, loves us, and it really hurts him when he sees us fall into sin and to a bad path. And
Yeah,
so it's a modeling. It seems to me to be a modeling there.
yeah. And again, the story is it doesn't hit you over the head. Hey, this is a Catholic story. It's more, I tried to set out to tell an entertaining story and just let my Catholic belief just kind of come through where it would. And there is every story has a villain. Every story has a hero. Every story has a villain. And with this villain, there was a moment at the end of the story where I really wanted him to make a certain decision, which I won't give away, but I wanted him to make a certain decision, and and uh, and he doesn't do it. And one of the brothers explains it with basically he says we all have free will. You can want the best for someone, and you can desperately hope that they will do something, but at the end of the day, each of us has this this great and awful gift of free will to choose the good or not. And we're never going to be, you know, God loves us, so He's never going to compel us against our will to choose the good. And so that was something that with this villain, I was writing it and exploring it. Writing is a deeply personal thing, and you're kind of going through your own mind as you do this, and kind of stop and think about that. Okay, how many times in my life have I not chosen the good for whatever reason? Either I was too distracted, I was too busy, I was too tired to see it, or I just was feeling cranky or angry or didn't want to, or selfish. So so I just tried to show that in a story, and again, just let the story happen, tell the story, but explore those ideas through these characters and let other people just see them, and hopefully, not only to draw some hope from it, but also be able to think about their life, their situation. Okay, am I am I building the habits that are going to predispose me to choose the good when that comes, or am I building habits that will help me do the opposite? And that's what we human beings are, a collection of habits. And we certainly choose those habits in the beginning, but over time, I think it gets harder and harder to choose otherwise if we've been habituated to one way of living or being or thinking. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm also thinking on that same note that because you wrote this book where it was kind of in that setting of late 60s, early 1970s, people who are in that age bracket, I mean, people who are really living in that age bracket are going to be in their 60s and 70s and maybe even into their 80s, of course, those who are reading still and active in their lives that way. But it's a wonderful book also for, say, in that younger age bracket, the millennials younger, because
right.
it's historical fiction, as you say. So not only are you getting some of those tests in morality, right? And say, what will you choose, the good, or are you going to choose the good and avoid the evil, or are you going to kind of go in your own way? But that's a great message for any age, and the historical fiction part of it for those in their 20s, 30s, and 40s will be an educational piece too
Sure.
on that time period.
Yeah, no, I hope so. And I also, people who've read it and have reviewed it online, at Amazon, one of the things that they seem to really like, and again, this was kind of a surprise to me, but I was grateful for it. Again, it's an entertaining story about boys in the woods, and people loved the the parts where the boys are in the woods and they're building their fire. They at one point there's a flood and they have to build a raft to get back home. And people love that. And I think they love it because, for some of the older people, they remember growing up that way where you could strike out into the hills and be gone overnight with your friends camping, and you brought your own dinner, and you brought Campbell's tomato soup can and like a skillet because you were 12 years old and not thinking, too much. Oh, I'll heat up my soup in my skillet. Oh, I forgot a spoon. Well, I guess I'll wait for it to cool. I mean, it's like that. So boys going out in the woods and building fires and having adventures. And I think certainly, the older people who read it said, hey, I liked that because that reminded me of my childhood. But people my age and younger who've read it said, well, I liked that because that's what I would have liked to have done. And if you grew up in a suburban context the way I did, uh, you didn't get to do that a whole lot unless you went out to do that. And so people seem to like that too, and they're boys. They fight, one of them falls in love, because that you have to do that. um, and so people seem to enjoy that part of it too. And that's again of any age.
Yeah, excellent job, really. And again, I just that shout out to our audience to please do go to the website, maybe even now if you got your phone there with you. Last Summer Boys, go to Amazon, buy the book. Great time of year with the holidays coming up. Now, we're going to be coming to a close pretty soon, but I know you
Sure.
have another project that you're working on.
Yeah.
The spoiler is, I think that is something around the area of the Depression, the
Right.
Great Depression. Tell us a little bit before we end so that people can
Yeah.
keep an eye out there for Bill Rivers' next book.
Sure. Thanks so much, Anne, and thanks for the time. Yeah, this next project, I just wanted to explore a little bit deeper in time, the Great Depression, and how um, similar concepts of how families held together during an even greater turmoil. And this one, I think I want to lean a bit more into the Catholic side of it. What is the role of faith and the church in helping people stay together and choose the good, the true, and the beautiful when the whole world's crashing down around your ears? So
Looking
we'll
forward to
see.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
sounds good. And you know what? It's at a perfect time because if you think about it, those people who really lived during that time, I mean, most of them are deceased. They were really like, unless they were very, very young, right?
Mhm.
Unless they were children or,
Yeah.
some of those people who are living past the age of 90 or
Yeah.
even 100, of course, they remember well. But anybody in their like early 80s, things like that might not have the recollection as
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, which means it's
So,
harder to write because you have to go back and there's fewer
yes,
people to talk to about it.
but it's
Yeah.
important to write so that people in this age know and understand that was the greatest generation. I mean, and we've
Mhm.
heard that over and over again, right? That they went through a tremendous amount, even compared to what we have today, probably culturally, and with that depression, and with holding on to that their Catholic faith. So
Yeah.
it's all so beautiful. Now, do you have another website, or is this the main one? The
Yeah,
last
no,
summer.
lastsummerboys.com is great. And you can find it on Amazon. You just go to Amazon, it's just Last Summer Boys. And so it's easily found there as, paperback or Kindle or audiobook too, if you prefer those.
Yeah, it's funny you said that because I do prefer those, and maybe some
Lots
of
of
our
people
audience
do.
does too.
And
So,
the gentleman who reads it does a wonderful job. His name is Michael Crouch, and he just does a wonderful job with the voices on it.
I'm glad that you told me. Admittedly, I didn't know it was on Audible, but now that I know, I'm going to be getting it on Audible because it's great to listen to when you're driving in the car,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Especially in
So,
that Philadelphia traffic end,
yeah, that's right.
Schuylkill Expressway.
Try to avoid that. But I want to mention one thing before we end is just a thank you to our friend Michael Augsburger, who brought us together, and he's he's a Catholic movie critic. And
Yes,
so we just want to thank Michael for all his work and bringing us together for this program. So, Bill, thank you so much again.
my pleasure, Ann. Thank you so much.
And we'll see all of you here next week on Journeys in Faith on Fiat Ministry Network. God bless.
Journeys of Faith is a production of Fiat Ministry Network and Patchwork Heart Ministry. For more information about Journeys of Faith, email info@fiatministrynetwork.tv. And be sure to friend, follow, and like us on social media. Just search Journeys in Faith with Anne DeSantis.